Sex scenes can be really awkward for actors. There's one school of thought that actors simply can't authentically simulate a sex scene.
That got a lot less hot real quick, didn't it?
But what's the alternative? If the script calls for a sex scene and you can't fake it, what should you do? Well, here are the top 10 times actors actually did it on screen. Kieran O'Brien and Margo Stilley in 9 songs.
She was 21. Beautiful. Egotistical.
This movie, from acclaimed writer and director Michael Winterbottom, is named after the 9 songs that are played by 8 bands in filmed live performances that are peppered throughout the cut of the film. But it's not the live music performances that people were talking about when the movie came out. It was the sexual stuff. The Guardian has declared the movie to be the most sexually explicit mainstream movie in the history of film. The lead actors, Kieran O'Brien and Margo Stilley, engage in many sexual acts in the movie, unsimulated, doing it for real. And that's what made the film so talked about and controversial. There's a graphic foot job in a bath, masturbation with a vibrator, masturbation without a vibrator, genital fondling, oral sex, vaginal sex, all kinds. Winterbottom's cinematic craft in handling the sexual content in the film was actually praised by some critics. One wrote, "Winterbottom's film looks like a porn movie, but it feels like a love story. The sex is used as a metaphor for the rest of the couple's relationship, and it is shot with Winterbottom's customary sensitivity. The reality of the actors actually doing it on camera worked in the movie's favor, since it has such honesty and ingenuity." No need to take any clothing off to join our notification squad. Just hit that subscribe button and ring that bell.
Bruce, what are you doing?
Oh, we're just easing into a big fella.
Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider in Last Tango in Paris.
What about that? Can I open that?
This has become one of the most controversial sex scenes in cinema history, since real penetration was used to convey an anal rape scene. Marlon Brando's character uses butter as lube and then proceeds to rape Maria Schneider's character. A lot has been written and debated about the making of this scene, since it is thought that director Bernardo Bertolucci was not entirely truthful with the 2 actors. The filmmaker said that Brando was a monster as an actor and a darling as a human being, since he became irate at Bertolucci when he found out that he had made Schneider feel uncomfortable about the scene on set. She herself has said that she felt a little raped. Bertolucci later explained that it wasn't until Brando saw the movie that he realized what had been done, and goes on to blame Brando by saying, "Didn't you realize what you were doing?" Needless to say, the victim blaming didn't go over well with Brando, and the 2 didn't talk for years. Meanwhile, we can't even fathom how poor Schneider felt.
You're crazy.
Angeliki Papoulia and Anna Kalaitzidou in Dogtooth.
Το ζώο που μας απειλεί λέγεται γάτα. Είναι το πιο επικίνδυνο ζώο που υπάρχει.
Long before he made the leap to Hollywood to make twisted horror movies with a paunchy, dorky version of Colin Farrell in the lead role, Yorgos Lanthimos made a real name for himself in the Greek film industry. This Oscar-nominated study of incest and screwed-up family life was one that made his voice heard on the international stage and got Hollywood interested in him. There's one scene in the movie that utilizes a real sex act between the characters. It has a very unsexy setup. It starts when the dad pays off one of his employees to have sex with his son. Then the son refuses to perform oral sex on the woman, so she gets angry and receives it from the kid's sister instead. It establishes a very openly sexual relationship among the family, which isn't exactly hot or erotic, but certainly does drive the plot of the movie and its character development forward in an interesting way. Lanthimos explained the need to use unsimulated sex in the cunnilingus scene by saying it was needed to establish the unusual and dysfunctional lifestyle resulting from the isolation orchestrated by their dictator of a father, including the incest.
Όταν κάνεις παιδιά να πάρουν τα λάθος ερεθίσματα και να δημιουργήσουν το λάθος χαρακτήρα.
Karl Glusman, Klara Kristin, and Aomi Muyock in Love.
How can something so wonderful bring such great pain?
For this 2015 erotic art house movie, Argentinian director Gaspar Noé met a couple of actors in a nightclub and then had them have unsimulated and unchoreographed sex on camera. Not a lot of movies get made this way. This film, by the way, has nothing to do with the Judd Apatow-produced romantic comedy series on Netflix starring Paul Rust and Gillian Jacobs. Both of them deal with sex and relationships, but in very, very different ways. Noé promised that that this film would give guys a hard-on and make girls cry, which is certainly a haunting way to begin the press tour for your movie. IndieWire thought that the movie's sex was the most hardcore on-screen sex ever to screen at Cannes. Noé said in an interview leading up to the film's premiere about its many genuine sex scenes, all the sex scenes are not as you usually see them, but show more in a beautiful, sad, or melancholic way. It is also worth noting that this movie was released in 3D. 3D release is usually reserved for Hollywood blockbusters about superheroes and wizards.
Fool of a took.
Not foreign films where the actors have real sex for 2.5 hours.
Oh my god. This is a nightmare.
Robert Pattinson in Little Ashes.
Morality, immorality, good, bad, we have to smash that to pieces.
When Robert Pattinson played the part of iconic painter Salvador Dali in this biopic, he was required to do a gay sex scene. This was long before the world knew him as Edward Cullen, and therefore long before he was the apple of every teenage girl in the world's eye. But he was still a dedicated performer, and he decided that simulated sex just doesn't work.
I know what you are.
Whether or not Dali and Federico Garcia Lorca actually had sex has been debated by historians for years. Dali Lorca biographer Ian Gibson has said that it depends on how you define an affair. After all, sex isn't everything in a relationship, especially for someone like Dali, who didn't like being touched. The writer of the movie said it's clear from their letters to each other that their friendship became intimate, but that Dali found the physical part difficult and couldn't continue on. He said they tried to have sex, but it hurt, so they couldn't consummate the relationship. For the movie version of that, Pattinson went for it. They shot him from the waist up while he masturbated in order to get a genuine shot of his orgasm face. Charming.
And what exactly does that make you?
Angelina Jolie and Antonio Banderas in Original Sin.
Edwin, be careful. He has a fearful temper.
This Hollywood remake of a Francois Truffaut movie has long been rumored to have contained real sex in its sex scene between Angelina Jolie and Antonio Banderas' characters. The two actors' chemistry in the scene seems to be too authentic to have been simulated. Eventually, director Michael Christopher revealed in an interview and also in his director's commentary on the home release of the movie that it was in fact real, or at least he hinted at it.
Come to bed.
You must be exhausted.
Jolie and Banderas had both approached Christopher and told him that they would only agree to do the scene if they were fully nude, which is an odd request for an actor to make, that they can be more naked than they're required. When the movie was going in to be rated before its release, the MPAA simply would not allow such graphic nudity to be shown in theaters. They wouldn't even allow it on the unrated NC-17 version of the movie. That's why the sex scene is cut so unusually, and there are random fades in and out in the middle of it. So, somewhere out there is an archive containing what is basically an Angelina Jolie Antonio Banderas sex tape.
Liar! Say yes!
Divine in Pink Flamingos.
You're in drag eating dog shit. You know,
John Waters' so-called masterpiece is a pretty disgusting movie. The guy wrote and directed and produced and narrated and shot and edited it, so his name is in the credits quite a few times. This is entirely his vision, and it's abhorrent.
How's this for a center spread?
It stars Divine, who has been described as the filthiest person alive, a title that she backs up in the final moments of the movie when she picks up some dog crap off the floor and then eats it. That's John Waters' idea of art, apparently. It features scenes of exhibitionism, sodomy, masturbation, voyeurism, rape, incest, murder, vomiting, and cannibalism. In one scene, Divine gives a blowjob to the man who is playing her character's son, and she did it for real. The movie ended up getting banned in a bunch of countries, including in Switzerland and Australia. After a certain amount of time had passed, you could pick up an uncut version of the film on VHS tape in Australia, but one has to wonder why you would. It's some people's cup of tea, but for better or for worse, it is a disgusting film, exactly as it's set out to be.
Look pretty for the picture, Connie.
Chloe Sevigny in Brown Bunny.
I do a dramatic scene, open my pants and have a full erection.
Chloe Sevigny found herself surrounded by some serious media attention back in 2003 when she took part in the movie Brown Bunny. She had become a very well-known name in the world of independent cinema after her stellar turns in the movies Kids and Boys Don't Cry, the latter of which was praised as a landmark for mainstreaming understanding of the LGBTQ community. But then she did Brown Bunny, in which she was required to perform unsimulated oral sex on the film film's director, Vincent Gallo, who was also her co-star. This was before Paris Hilton's sex tape had been released and long before millions of hours of graphic internet porn was readily available to people across the world. So graphic sexual content was not as much of a commodity, and the talk of the town leading up to the Cannes Film Festival premiere of the movie was that Sevigny's career was over.
You're only as good as the material you're given. Or so. I use it as an excuse.
Some media outlets even falsely reported that the actress had been dropped by her agency, although they continued to represent her to this day. These people seriously needed to chill out. Of course, that movie, and specifically that scene, did not end up being the career-ending devastation for her that it was tipped to be. In fact, she had her first movie as a director released just last year. Sevigny doesn't regret the film at all, saying it was a way for her to reclaim herself, show the world what she stands for, and push the envelope. Pushing the envelope is a pretty good motivation.
We did more than one take.
You bet you did.
That's unbelievable.
Back to back.
That's fantastic.
The Penthouse pets in Caligula.
He's so fat. He's disgusting.
He's not.
This movie about the rise and fall of the Roman Emperor Caligula, starring Malcolm McDowell, was initially conceived as a feature-length Hollywood porno. Penthouse magazine founder Bob Guccione produced the movie with the intention of making a full-length porno film with a proper story and everything. Comedy magazine The National Lampoon were making their own comedy movies and raking in the big bucks.
I'm a zit.
So why couldn't porno magazine Penthouse make their own porno movies and do the same? So Guccione came up with the idea to do a Hollywood biopic of the sex-obsessed Roman Emperor Caligula. This way, he could get a Hollywood budget in to tell an important historical story, but he could also fill the movie with sex scenes. Everybody wins.
You amateur.
Amateur.
The theme of the screenplay, written oddly enough by Gore Vidal, was that
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
But the theme of the finished film is that sex is awesome. This is because Guccione wanted to make it even sexier, so he got the Penthouse pets in to shoot some genuine sex scenes. There are some brilliant actors in this movie, ranging from Helen Mirren to Peter O'Toole. But the Penthouse guys weren't interested in making what society deems high art and made a porno instead.
Although I have taken the form of Caius Caligula, I am a god.
Everyone in Nymphomaniac.
My name is Jo. Hi, Jo. And I'm a nymphomaniac.
Lars von Trier has always been known for making dangerous movies. This sexy two-part art film was tricky to get made. In the end, he had to make it as a co-production between 4 European countries, Belgium, France, Germany, and Denmark, just to get together the relatively small budget of $4.7 million. The movie is about a woman reminiscing about her sexual exploits, and the idea was that all of the sex in the movie would be real. The 325-minute art house epic stars some big names like Charlotte Gainsbourg, Stacey Martin, Stellan Skarsgård, Shia LaBeouf, Christian Slater, Jamie Bell, Uma Thurman, Willem Dafoe, and Connie Nielsen. LaBeouf explained that there was a disclaimer at the top of the script that said everything would be for real. All the illegal stuff would be shot in blurred images, but otherwise everything was really happening. LaBeouf went on to say, "Von Trier's dangerous. He scares me, and I'm only going to work now when I'm terrified." Some of the actresses used prosthetic vaginas, but other than that, closed sets were used and the actors actually did it. During its advanced screening at Sundance Film Festival, the first part of the movie went under the title Film X in order to keep it a secret from festival goers. It was a highly anticipated film in the art house movie community since it was being directed by Lars von Trier, the king of the European art house filmmaking scene. And people who found themselves in the secret advanced screening freaked out. It's not a sexy movie that glamorizes the sexual content. In fact, von Trier considered it to be the 3rd chapter in what he has unofficially termed the Depression Trilogy. The final cut of the film, including both parts edited into one long movie, runs at over 5.5 hours in length.
And you've probably misunderstood the whole thing.
Well, we've shown you the love, and now you can do the same for us by hitting that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell. While you're here, spend some more time with us by clicking on one of our other great videos.